on Wednesday, February 3rd. It's past 7 o'clock. The meeting is held via teleconference Zoom. You may watch the meeting without providing public comment by accessing the link that were published. After registering, you will receive a confirmation email containing information about joining the meeting. All comments provided shall be limited to 3 minutes or less, as determined by the chair. All members of the public will be limited to 1 comment per agenda item and 1 comment for non-agenda items. The online written comments form previously used is no longer available for public comment. I would like to call to order the meeting for tonight. And Commissioner Trong, good evening. I would like to see if maybe you can help us with the Pledge of Allegiance tonight. You are still muted, Commissioner Trong.
Might be having some technical difficulties.
Yes.
I'd like to proceed with
Ms.
the Pledge of Allegiance.
Batillo, would you like to help us?
Yes,
Thank you very much.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of
America and to
and to the
republic
republic for which it stands,
for which stands one
nation, under
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with liberty
with liberty
and justice.
and justice
for
for all.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Hi, Oscar. I'm very sorry. Now I think my microphone's working.
Yes, good.
Yeah,
Good
it's
to know.
just the wire or something. I'm sorry about that.
Yes, no problem. Thank you very much. I would like to do a roll call. Commissioner Batillo,
Here,
Commissioner Rosario,
Here,
Commissioner Van Trong,
Here?
myself, Commissioner Leon, I'm present. 4. At this point, Commissioner Vishal, Commissioner Gandhi.
Present.
Sorry, I didn't.
No, that's fine.
At this point, those are the only that are present. Who is Ms. Kantak? Is she a new commissioner or?
He is our Assistant City Manager.
Okay, sorry.
Good evening, Chair.
Good evening, thank you. Okay, so right now we have quorum. We have 5 members. And we proceed with the meeting. Thank you. At this point, we're not seeking alternates. They haven't joined the meeting yet. I would like to move to approval of the agenda for today, February 3rd.
I make a motion to approve the agenda.
I
Thank
second
you.
it.
Who seconded?
Van?
Okay, thank you. We will call for the vote. Commissioner Rosario,
yes,
And myself to
Yes.
Commissioner Gandhi.
Yes.
So we have 5 at this point. The agenda approved. I would like to move to approval of the meeting minutes from January 6, 2021.
Okay, I move that the minutes dated January 6, 2021 be approved.
Thank you, Commissioner Rosario.
Commissioner Batillo, second the motion.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Batillo. Any objection? If there's no objection,
No.
then
No.
we'll vote. Commissioner Gandhi,
Yes.
Commissioner Van Lantron,
Yes,
and myself also, yes. The minutes of the approval of the minutes for January 6 have been approved. Thank you. We're going to go to item number 7 on the agenda, public forum. Interested public members may provide comments to the commission on any subject not on the agenda via Zoom. Commenters may state their name and address for the record and shall limit the remarks to 3 minutes or less as determined by the chair. As an agendized item, no response is required of the commission or city staff. However, the commission may request staff to agendize the item for a future meeting. Do we have any public forum?
There is no public forum at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Mazon. Announcements. Do we have any announcements?
There are no announcements at this time.
We're going to move fast. Thank you. Item number 9, business items. Trails, pedestrian, and bicycle master plan. The Trails, Pedestrian, and Bicycle Master Plan is in the approved City 2020-2025 Capital Improvement Program. This project provides an update to the existing 1997 Trail Master Plan and the 2009 Bicycle Master Plan document. The plan will focus on updating existing trails, bicycles, and pedestrian routes and make recommendations for facilities improvements, programs, and policies. The recommendation is to receive a presentation on the draft City of Milpitas Trails, Pedestrian, and Bicycle Master Plan, Project 3448.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to introduce Fanny Yu. She's an associate civil engineer with the city, and will be giving a presentation on the Trails, Pedestrian, and Bicycle Master Plan. If we get
Thank
that
you.
loaded, that would be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Good evening, everyone. My name is Fanny Yu, and I'm an associate civil engineer with the engineering department. I'm also the project manager working on updating the city's trails, pedestrians, and bicycle master plan. Thank you for providing this opportunity to present to you an overview of the project and the public draft plan. If at any point anyone can't hear me, please let me know. Next slide, please. The document will provide support for future improvements, so they are more likely to be implemented for the future. It provides a vision and action plan to improve active transportation for everyone. We also want to show support for connectivity and access to destinations. We also want to integrate trails and biking to and from the new BART station as well as other transit options. We also want to improve safety and provide comfort and ease of use of active transportation for everyone involved. Next slide, please. Here are the main contents of the plan. I would like to highlight a few of these in the presentation. Our process started by exploring the existing infrastructure and programs of the city, and then we performed an analysis based on where the gaps are and the needs of the community. We then provided a web map that offered people to place lines and dots, and we asked them questions like, where are you trying to go? What are your points of interest? Are there any routes or areas that you feel challenged by? Where do you want to see kind of like your improvements? And then we took all that feedback and then we did an analysis and provided recommendations for those improvements. And then we went back out to the public to gauge input on whether these were the right solutions for these problems and how important these types of solutions were to the public. From there, we created a list of priority improvements and discussed potential policies and programs. And from there, we completed the public draft plan, which is now ready for public review. Next slide, please. As the city continues to grow and new transportation technologies are introduced, we should explore how this growth affects our connectivity and our relationship with transportation. Now, the last Trails Plan and Bicycle Master Plan were adopted in 1997 and 2009, respectively. I'm sure many of you are aware that a lot has changed since that time, and it's a good time now that we can update these two documents to reflect what is here now. Previously, we were working on these plans as totally separate documents, a separate trails plan and a separate bicycle plan, but we soon realized that the trails and the bicycle networks really relied heavily on each other. So we felt it made more sense to combine all this into one cohesive plan. Next slide, please. In terms of what's new from the previously adopted plans, we have specific considerations for pedestrian networks, which is something that wasn't included in either of the previous plans. This will also provide a comprehensive consideration for active modes of transportation, such as biking and walking. The plan will also reflect the changing conditions within Milpitas, including population growth, employment opportunities, and the addition of the BART opening and potential regional connections. We did a further analysis of the previously proposed trails based on changing conditions and standards and created a feasible list of those improvements. Something that's new is the bike and scooter share, which has quickly changed the landscape of the readily available transportation throughout the entire Bay Area. Next slide, please. Now, through the various public engagement efforts, we learned a few key themes. Now, there is limited connectivity in today's active transportation network, and many people experience major barriers to travel, such as major roadways like the freeways, Calaveras Boulevard, Montague Expressway, and Great Mall Parkway. Now, with growing population and increased job opportunity, there's an increasing demand on the transportation system. And with the new BART system, many people see this as a new travel opportunity, and people want to know, how do I get there safely? There's also a desire for improved safety, increased travel options, and improved connections to the destinations. Next slide, please. Now, based on all the feedback, we've developed multiple networks for the trails and bicycles. Now, this map that you're seeing is the best overview map showing those two networks working together. The recommendations shown were based on the key themes that I just discussed, and we try to keep in mind the following. We're trying to find low stress connected network. How can we help people of all ages and abilities get to where they want to go? We also want to maximize use of existing right-of-way and identify near-term opportunities. Now, these type of projects are easier to deliver as opposed to projects that require like major roadway reconfigurations. And then we also have the regional perspective. We want to make connections and continuity into San Jose and Fremont. We also want to enhance multimodal travel opportunities, including connections to transit. Next slide, please. In the plan, we also identify spot improvements throughout the map as well. Most of these are intersection improvements or trail access improvements. Now, there's a multitude of improvements that you can employ, such as signal timing, upgraded curb ramps, high visibility crosswalks, green bicycle boxes, trailheads, wayfinding signage, just to name a few. And these improvements should be assessed based on the location, community need, and will need further design in the future. Next slide, please. As mentioned earlier, bike and scooter share are fairly new to the city of Milpitas. Now, these types of transportation is very popular in metropolitans like San Francisco and New York. And I'm sure many people have noticed them. They have quickly found their way throughout the entire Bay Area, and they're coming to Milpitas. In order to prepare Milpitas for these new types of technologies, we need to prepare a few guidelines that will guide future policies. Now, the plan offers an opportunity to explore like a pilot program, and we've identified a few locations that would be a great start for the pilot. We currently recommend fewer locations for the first year in order to work out any kinks of the policy, and it's recommended to reassess and expand the program after 1 year. Next slide, please. The public draft plan is currently live and available and for review and comments. I'll post a link in the chat of the Zoom. We'll also be providing the links in various web posts, social media posts, and pretty much anywhere I can get the link to be posted and shared. So I encourage everyone to share this with your family and friends, anyone in Milpitas and anyone who works here as well. We'll also have a virtual open house, which is more of a condensed version of the plan, because if you go to the plan right now, it's almost 200 pages. I'm sure not everyone's going to want to read that. But the virtual open house is going to condense everything to like message boards, and you'll also have options to, do surveys, submit any questions, and do polls. And then we'll also have a public meeting around March 24th. A time will be announced on the website as well. And then we're hoping to answer all your questions at the meeting. And then if everything goes according to plan, we hope to adopt the plan in early June of this year. And that concludes my presentation. Does anyone have any questions, comments, concerns?
Thank you for your presentation, Ms. Yu. I think it's very important to really have these planned because we need to move forward for the new Milpitas that we're looking forward. Any comment from any commissioner?
Oh, hi, this is Commissioner Batillo. I'd like to get a copy of the report.
Oh, yes, I will post that in the
Yes.
chat right now.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or any questions?
Yeah, so this is Commissioner Gandhi. I just had a question. So is there a plan to like create a linkage between all the parks or
Yes,
something like that,
so-
or the parks which are nearby to each other?
Right. So what I want to mention is some of the trails do connect between the parks, but we're really relying on the pedestrian network. Luckily, Milpitas does have a fairly complete pedestrian network in terms of sidewalk connection. But we're really looking to see, you know, people are not as comfortable using like bicycling on sidewalks, and we want to try to discourage that as well. So we're looking for more connections, safer connections for bicyclists in between those parks, as well as pedestrian networks between the parks.
Right. And the other question I had was that if you're looking for it, what kind of the turf would be? Because like we have seen that some of this connection is near into my home, the parks, especially during the rainy season that you cannot even walk or even bike because of the red mud basically has a lot of water in it.
Are you talking about the trails along the creeks?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, yes. So we did take a closer look at the creeks. So many of the creeks are jurisdiction by the water district, and we did work with them to see what was feasible, what was not feasible. A lot of them have banks and existing trails on one side of the creek, but not the other side. And so we're trying to figure out how do we bridge those connections. Now we will have to rely on some on-street connections. For example, one of the things that we figured out was, if anyone's familiar with the Penitencia Creek that is kind of near California Circle, near those new homes in Dixon Landing, you know, some people said they wanted like an off-street connection between that trail crossing over into McCarthy area. And one of the things we found is, you know, some people wanted this connection, but this creek goes under the freeway, and every winter that area starts to flood. So we quickly realized that, you know, off-street trail of this kind is not feasible. There's no way we can do it. So what we're going to propose is on-street connections that are a little bit safer for people to use.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Any other comment or question? Well, thank you very much, Ms. Yu, for your presentation. And I saw that you already posted the link, so.
Yeah, and I
thank you very
see
much.
there's also a question from Commissioner Patillo. So the file is available to be mailed out, but we do recommend that you put your comments on the the online link, just because that's the only way we can capture your comments at the moment. It is a fairly large file. I don't know if it can be emailed at this moment, but what we can do is try to put, if you go to the link right there, there's actually a download link for it.
Yes, it might be a big file. So thank you. It was just hard for me to read as fast.
It's okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Chair, if I may, we'll be sure to send a link to that email, or excuse me, an email with that link after tonight's meeting.
Thank you very much, Robert. Okay, thank you for your presentation, and we will move to the next item on the agenda, 9.B, the CDBG process. The City of Milpitas is designated as an entitlement community by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, and is allocated grant funds on an annual basis to meet the needs of low to moderate income individuals through the Community Development Block Grant, CDBG. The recommendation, we're going to receive a presentation on the CDBG funding process for the fiscal year 2021-2022.
Thank you, Chair. So Myself and Sarah Court, who you are all familiar with, are going to do a quick presentation on our plan for the year for the CDBG process. The first half of this presentation, which I'll do, is sort of overview, things that you guys have already seen and kind of experienced, and just taking you through a little bit of last year. And then the second half, we'll touch in more on the process part, which Sarah will cover. Next slide, please. So as we're all aware, CDBG stands for Community Development Block Grant. It's administered by the Department of Housing and Urban Development. They provide us the federal funding every year through their budget process. Milpitas receives approximately $600,000 a year, give or take. We've seen the amounts increase year over year over the last couple of years, but given all the budget uncertainty, we're not entirely sure how much we're set to receive this year. As the final bullet point states, we will have a final number will be allocated to us from HUD once their budget process concludes. And every year is sort of different. They don't exactly have a deadline for these sort of things. So I think the last 5 years they've been allocated in 5 different months. So we check periodically, and usually after it's posted online, we get an email about 2 to 3 weeks later confirming that number. So as soon as we find out that number, we will share that with you and our stakeholders. Next slide, please. So one of the key parts of CDBG is that every dollar that is spent must benefit one of the following national objectives. The first one is the one we're most familiar with. It's to benefit low and moderate income persons. That is predominantly where our funding goes. We do not have, in the recent history, we have not allocated anything towards bullet points or numbers 2 and 3. Eliminating, preventing slums or blight requires a bit of extra work on the city's part in order to identify some federally defined areas. And the final bullet point here, number 3, is actually for disaster relief. And interestingly enough, HUD did not categorize COVID-19 as a disaster for CDBG funding. So even throughout the pandemic, all of our activities have gone to benefit low and moderate income persons. Next slide, please. So these percentages you're fairly familiar with. To recap, 15% of the total allocation goes to public services, 65% of the allocation will go to capital projects, and then the final 20% can go for planning, administration, and fair housing. We received an allocation of CDBG CV funds last year, and those funds were specifically allocated for us to projects that prevent, prepare for, and respond to the coronavirus. So those are specialized funds, and we'll get into that in the next slide. We can show you a little history. But the minimum for each project has been $5,000, and all awarded funds directly service Milpitas residents. Next slide, please. So this shows you what we were able to do last year. So in a normal year, we would look at what they call formula funds. Formula funds are the standard HUD allocation funds that we get every year. So last year we were allocated $676,413. At the time, we had not known about the pandemic, but once the pandemic hit and the CARES Act allocated additional CDBG funding, known as CDBG coronavirus funding, the city was allocated an additional $397,911. And in addition to that, we had $290,039 of excess prior year funding that had not been used. So we were allowed to reallocate all of those funds at one time for a total, as you see, of $1.364 million. So that was last year. So the next slide will show you what's proposed for this year. So this year, we are projecting again 600,000. Again, that number is still to be determined. Could be less, could be way more. But we did receive a third tranche of CDBG CV funding. So just to explain that a little bit, the first number that I showed you, the $397,911, that was tranche 1. That was the immediate COVID relief funds from the CARES Act. The second tranche went directly to the states. and the states determined how those funds would be allocated to various jurisdictions. The third tranche, which is the number that you see here, was allocated to us at $582,236. So at this time, we have about $1.18 million to allocate for this fiscal year. Now, there may be some prior year funds from the last couple of years that for projects that are still outstanding because the pandemic delayed them a little bit, but those projects are moving forward. So there may be a few additional funds to reallocate from prior years, but all in all, this is about the number that we expect to allocate this fiscal year. Next slide, please. And then finally, we took the opportunity during the CDBG CV process where we had to really hone in on what our consolidated plan goals were. Now, the consolidated plan, just to kind of give you some context, every 5 years, the city is required to submit a plan to HUD called the consolidated plan. And that tells HUD what we intend to do every year for the next 5 years with our CDBG dollars. So while you primarily have been working on the annual action plan allocation, right, the year-to-year allocation, those yearly allocations all fit into a larger consolidated plan. And the last consolidated plan spanned from 2017 to 2022. So this is actually the last year of the consolidated plan. And one of the things that the CARES Act allowed us to do last year was to make substantial amendments to the consolidated plan so that we can allocate funds to projects that we didn't know we needed to fund because of the coronavirus. So we took the opportunity to really clarify a lot of sections in the consolidated plan that seemed a little vague and would really help us identify the projects that we have been funding. So as you could see the goals here, I won't read through all of them, but we have a goal that's sort of very broad. It's community funding and public services. And what we did is we took out domestic violence, senior services, and residents at risk of eviction and made those individual goals. And that will allow us to show and demonstrate that we are using these funds for very specific purposes that the community, supports. So these are all of the goals listed in our consolidated plan. And so it doesn't necessarily mean that we have to use funds every year on these things, but over the course of 5 years, we have obligations, we have goals that we've set within each of these bullet points. So I'll turn it over to Sarah and we can head to the next slide. And then I'm happy to answer any questions after her presentation.
Thank you.
Thanks, Robert. Hi, everyone. This is Sarah. I'll be covering kind of our plan moving forward as fiscal year 2021, 2022 approaches. So kind of to kick off this fiscal year, and as we kind of reported on during the last Community Advisory Commission meeting, we developed a CDBG community survey that's intended to gather feedback about where the community thinks that the CDBG funds should be prioritized. And the survey that we created is in alignment with those consolidated plan goals that Robert just covered. So I linked the survey here, and I did also email it to all of our commissioners. So so don't forget to take that survey and to choose the option that you're a commissioner filling out that survey. So the survey is live now, and we'll be accepting responses through March 21st, 2021. Next slide, please. So this slide kind of outlines our application process for this year for anybody, any community organizations who are interested in applying for CDBG funding. The biggest difference this year is that we're shifting to a more simplified application as the initial kind of interest for CDBG funding. So in years past, we have a kind of a full, very detailed application. I think it's about 6 or 7 pages that asks a lot of information about the organization that's applying, their budget information, information about their staff. So a lot of information in that full application. And that will still be filled out for those who will receive funding, but we're going to begin the process by opening up a simplified application to the public. Agencies that are interested in applying will fill out a one-page simplified application, which just includes either agency name and information, how much they would be interested in requesting for CDBG funding, the total cost of their project, and a brief description of their project, and total projected number of Milpitas residents served. So this will, hopefully make it a little easier for community-based organizations to express interest in receiving CDBG funding. The simplified applications, they will be accepted from February 8th, 2021, so this coming Monday, until March 21st, 2021. During that time, we'll be kind of reporting back, the influx of simplified applications to the CAC, and just kind of just gathering those all together so that we can keep you posted. And once we receive feedback from the CAC and bring all of the simplified applications to City Council, and the City Council decides on which projects that they would like to fund for the fiscal year, that's when those subgrantees will submit their full application, the detailed application with the scope of services, various documents that we need to kind of enter into contract with them for CDBG funding. So that's kind of the biggest change this year, is that we're beginning the process with a simplified application. And then once the funding plan is decided, that's when they'll submit the full application. The next slide, please. So here we'll get into what the role of the CAC will be in the upcoming allocation process for CDBG funding. The first, as I mentioned, the CDBG Community Needs Survey. So we're asking all of the CAC commissioners to complete the survey, to give us your feedback on what you think that CDBG funding should be prioritized for the upcoming fiscal year, and to also help us promote the survey, help us with outreach during this whole process, not only with the survey, but also, just spreading the word to local nonprofits about the application window being open, and, the process for submitting simplified applications for this fiscal year. Next slide, please. Lastly, we will be hosting a public hearing during the April 7th CAC meeting. So the CAC will facilitate this public hearing, kind of leading a discussion on providing input on the community needs, making recommendations on what the City Council should focus on, but funding for the upcoming fiscal year. So during this public hearing, staff will present the simplified application submissions. We won't have each of those agencies, present their project. We'll just kind of compile all of the submissions. The agencies will be invited to attend and to provide public comment about why they think their agency should be funded, but that will be optional. Just kind of, staff will kind of handle the presentation of which simplified applications were submitted. And we'll also share the results of the CDBG Community Needs Survey, both from the public and from the members of the CAC. And that will kind of lead into an open discussion to provide a recommendation on which areas that you all believe the City Council should focus on funding. So, we'll compile your recommendations, and we will present that to the City Council as they decide on their funding desires for the upcoming fiscal year. And next slide. So this slide covers our promotion and outreach efforts for the fiscal year 21-22. We're utilizing strategies in the city's citizen participation plan to approach outreach and public noticing guidelines. So far we have, posted that the application window is opening. That has to be posted to the public 30 days prior to the application window opening. We've also emailed out to our interest list about 75 to 80 or community-based organizations that we've worked with in the past, or that we're familiar with that serve Milpitas residents. So we've emailed them, a notice that the application window will be opening soon and the new process for this year. Hopefully the CAC will assist us in promoting the application window and the available funding for this year. We're also advertising in nonprofit newsletters. So I believe tomorrow in the Silicon Valley Council of Nonprofits newsletter, they'll be promoting this grant opportunity to, all of their stakeholders and community partners, and we'll also be pushing it out on social media. Next slide, please. So this final slide just kind of overviews the timeline for this fiscal year. In the past couple of months, we've worked on creating the survey, updating the documentation for the upcoming year. We've put out that notice that the application window will be opening, and we began outreach to our prospective applicants. So we've been pushing out that survey. The due date is March 21st, 2021. And on Monday, we'll be distributing the simplified application to our community outreach list. On February 17th, we'll be hosting an informational workshop to any prospective applicants who are interested in learning about the process for this year and the eligibility requirements for CDBG. And we will complete our outreach in March, just letting everybody know that the application window will be closing on March 21st. We'll bring all of this information to you on April 7th for the public hearing and gather your recommendations to present to City Council on the community needs and areas of focus for CDBG funding. And then we will, bring this information to the City Council, and they will, provide their feedback, and from there we will create the annual action plan for fiscal year 2021-2022. So I believe that's the end, and we'll just open it up for any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Sarah. Any question?
Really quick, Chair, if I may, just one small update that after the PowerPoint was finalized, we determined that the staff will be bringing the initial discussion to the City Council in May, and then final allocations will be brought in June. So we will have an initial discussion with the City Council regarding CDBG, and then a month later, we'll bring the final recommendations back to City Council for approval. Thank you.
So this is Commissioner Gandhi's. I had a question. How will we be filling out the data? Because in the past, we had either the ranking or we use the Excel sheets, like all that. Right now being virtual, how will we be filling out the data?
I think in years past, and great question, Commissioner. I think in years past, that process might have deterred a little bit from something a little bit more valuable in terms of discussion around the priorities that you feel are most important for the city to consider. So I think for this year, we'd like to propose not necessarily a form to fill out, but more of a discussion around the priorities that each commissioner feel that the council should consider when making their recommendations.
So we'll be basically making the recommendation for the applicants, right? Not the priorities or the goals, I mean to say.
Well, I think really it's about the goals, right? I think you as commissioners speak for the community. And so in order to do so, right, it would be to look at the goals and determine, what are some of the it may be a specific nonprofit that you would like to, present have them apply and be considered, but also just the goals, the things that you see around the city that you feel the city council should consider when allocating these funds.
Okay.
Robert, correct me if I'm wrong. So there are probably two stages that we're going to be part. That's the one that you mentioned. And what about what we used to put the numbers, the funding for all the different applicants, in this case, the one that has been pre-approved by the initial simplified application?
Yeah, great question, Chair. So again, I think really we want the public hearing event to be a discussion about the priorities and goals that you feel as commissioners, the city council should consider funding. So in lieu of actual dollar amounts, we believe that the discussion amongst commissioners about these goals is the most valuable asset for the council to consider in funding. So you'll listen to, potential presentations, well, not formal presentations, but, public comment from the applicants. And then there might be community needs that you want to bring up and discuss. And so those discussions is what we will bring to the city council on your behalf.
Thank you.
So Robert, this is Thelma. So we're gonna, are you gonna go also summarize it and give us your recommendation?
We will summarize your discussion points and put it in for our agenda report for the city council.
Oh, I see. So not a prior, because before we go to the April 7th, you already have a kind of recommendation.
Correct. Yeah. In years past, you are correct, Commissioner. We used to put down a number and everybody kind of filled in a number.
Okay.
And I think that given your role as the voice of the community, we feel like the discussion on the goals is really critical. The role of the city council is to approve the final allocations. But your voice as the representation of the community can speak to the goals, the main issues that you see that the council should consider. And then we're going to give the city council that opportunity to have a discussion about, the needs that they feel that the community needs as well, with your input and the community input as well. And then they'll make the final recommendations in June.
So potentially on the April 7th presentation and with the community that would have applied and our commissioners' ideas about the priority, it's potential that we won't finish, or we won't, what you will do is hear out everybody and then you will do the summary from that meeting.
Yes, I believe that discussion will provide us the ability to take your collective voice and put it we present everything in an agenda report to the city council to allow them to consider all the information needed to make these allocations.
All right. And then the May meeting would be your presentation of what you thought that you heard and that your summary. And then and potentially that is the document that we will review and approve for presentation to the city council.
Correct. We will provide a presentation to the city council, and we will use the survey. We will use the information gathered during the CAC public hearing, and the application amounts that people are requesting, and all of that will be presented to the city council for their discussion.
And you mentioned when is the target date for the city council presentation?
The first meeting will be in May. I don't have the date quite in front of me.
Okay. All right. The May thing then. So, okay, we possibly need to have our meeting first in the May, and then potentially the presentation to the city council would have been the third Tuesday and not the first Tuesday, because we need to meet first as a group and reviewing your presentation, your summary.
Well, we will have.
So we should schedule our presentation for the city council on the third Tuesday of May rather than the first, because we're meeting on the first Wednesday.
And thank you, Commissioner. We intend to have the presentation to the City Council May 4th. And so we will have the CAC public hearing in April and prepare our staff report based off that meeting and the feedback.
But that means that we wouldn't have reviewed what you were going to present to the City Council.
Correct me. Correct me if I'm wrong, Robert. So the April presentation is the one that we are going to summarize and put a recommendation of what our priorities are after we heard the ones who might be attending.
Correct. We will have attendance from the nonprofits, the nonprofit applicants, and then allow you as a group to discuss, which priorities, which applications and their subsequent priorities should be prioritized. And we would like to summarize that and present to City Council. And Chair, if I may, you do have a hand raised. I just want to alert you to that if you don't see it.
Okay, sorry. So I don't know if that's clear, Commissioner Batillo. To me, it has changed the role of the CAC regarding the CDBG. We are now listening and prioritizing what are some of the community needs, and we're going to present that to the City Council via a report that is done based on the presentation on April. But that doesn't state how we're allocating the funding. Is just the applications that we think are matching what we consider are the priorities that we have. Correct, Robert?
That is correct. Yes.
Robert, if I may have a quick
Council
question.
member Evelyn Chua has raised her hand.
Oh, it's all
Yeah,
right.
Chair, I don't know if you saw that.
Let all the commissioners speak first. I'll speak last, if that's okay, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Yes, Commissioner Tron.
Yes, thank you. Number one, Robert, would you kindly send you or Sarah send the PowerPoint presentation to all of us? And I think it will help us a great deal if you summarize the guideline of the discussion that we have right now, right? Because as you can see, the rule have changed. At Master, we like to have our perception about community need and priority. I think it's a wonderful idea. But I'm still unclear how we connect that to the application that we're about to receive from the community. What if our priority do not have any application? Or what if our priority fit what the city can provide and not with, anything from the community? How would that lay out? You understand what I'm trying to say?
Yes, Commissioner, that's a great question. I think that's why we would like, the CAC's assistance in the outreach portion. So it gives each of you an opportunity to really identify what are the important goals, the important nonprofits in the community that you feel could best benefit Milpitas residents and help us with that outreach if they're not already part of the known applicants that we get every year, and encourage them to apply for funding. I think that's the way we make that connection. We really would appreciate all of your support in finding these nonprofits that you may be aware of that we aren't. And so that's one way I think we can definitely bridge that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Chua, I think you have your hand raised.
Yes, thank you, Chair. If I may, through the chair to Robert, can you please put up the consolidated goals up again, the slide of consolidated goals? Robert?
I'm sorry, it's controlled by IT on the back end. Just give them 1 second.
Oh, okay.
And
Thank
then it's
you.
slide number 7.
I think this is the one. But I think there's another one, but we can start with this one. I'm just relating the charter of CAC. What I mean is your charter is to make recommendation to the city council on issues including citywide beautification, community and neighborhood cleanup, and neighborhood abatement. My question is, there's another slide, I think. Is there another one after this?
The one after this, council member, is of the community survey.
Okay, I want the one before that because I saw something. Is there another one before this on goals? Not that one.
I believe this was the only goal slide that we had.
Okay. Anyway, I know that CAC, I used to be in CAC for many years. I know that that in 2021, the commission will have some events on beautification. Is there a way for CAC itself can get funding for that? How does that work?
It would have to be researched. I know in past years, I had looked into potential funding every year when we did, for instance, spring cleanup.
Right.
We always had a discussion as to where the funding for the dumpsters would come from.
Right.
And so I started doing some initial research to see if that could be funded with CDBG dollars.
Right.
So I think there may be maybe some ways to do that. We'd really just have to hone in specifically on, like neighborhood and who is benefiting from this, because HUD, again, as the slide now shows, you have to benefit low and moderate income persons, and you have to be able to document who benefited from that. So that's a little bit of a challenge, but in some cases, we can get around that with using some other reporting ways that we can report that we assisted low and moderate income persons without having to ask every single individual for their demographics. But and forgive me, I'm kind of trailing here, but it's
yeah, it's okay. You don't have to answer now, but that's something I think that I know CAC will probably have an event for cleanup because that's part of your charter as a commission. And the other question I have is I introduced an initiative last night to temporary housing through hotel vouchers for homeless or unhoused residents. Can we get some funding from CDBG COVID for that?
I believe there is a pathway to that. I want to be extra sure on the research.
Yeah, please. Yeah, please research that one as well, because that's going to be a good project for CAC to be part of that initiative to give temporary housing, especially this the winter weather. So another one that I was thinking about, because I'm looking at the charter in terms of cleanup, again, I also introduced an initiative to maybe this is just focus on the cleanup of homeless camps for city-owned properties. So you might want to if I would like to research that one, if we can get some funding, because I know it's not cheap, but I see that you have a budget from $500,000 from CDBG COVID, because those are good projects for CAC, I think. Because like you said, it's totally different this time. Like one or two commissioners said it, that we're different focus now, learning from the pandemic of last year. So if you can do some research on that, that would be great.
Absolutely, council member.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I just wanted to add, Robert, when I was looking at the CDBG CV portion of funding, the COVID funding, I know that in some places, in some cities, excuse me, there is some support for families or residents who has tested positive and they are living in high density housing, and they are there's support that some cities are providing to those low income residents who to try to mitigate the infection rate among the area, and by trying to provide some vouchers, like Councilmember Chua was mentioning, or some type of support for those families. In some cases, even monetary support or in-kind support. So I don't know if that's something that can be considered with the CDBG CV portion, as well as we know that even though it states that the economy for 2021 might grow 3 or so percent, the reality is that the employment rate is not going to go up, and is really, really hard. And we have a lot of residents who are really affected. Not the difference between the blue and the white collar residents that are being affected. So I don't know if there's anything that can be within the parameters of the CDBG CV funding or areas like that. It's just a matter of throwing a question or inquiry.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, we can definitely look into that.
Thank you.
So this is Commissioner Gandhi. On the similar line, I know in the last year, we've for quite few meetings, we discussed about that safety first initiative by MUSD, and I know we tabled it for the later on to be discussed by the council. But should we probably have that kind of also allocation for those initiatives, because those are going to benefit community at large, which is specifically basically residing within the city of Milpitas. So including for the like marketing or distributing the PPE kits or the food supplies, and or helping with vaccination thing as the things that becomes more open, and all those kind of things, I would say.
And forgive me, Commissioner, what is your question?
So my question was if we can have like a category to fund something like that, I'm saying.
Well,
those initiatives.
And that's actually a good question. So every CDBG dollar has to be associated with an activity, and that activity has to be, applied for by a nonprofit or other entity and administered by that entity. So it's not simply that we could just allocate the CAC, kind of like general funding. It would have to be through a nonprofit partner.
Yes.
So if you have somebody in mind for things of that nature, then please encourage them to apply, and then their application will be considered like everybody else's.
Okay.
Yeah, so I
Thank you.
think that's the
Wait,
issue.
Sorry, Commissioner Batillo.
Yeah,
The
sorry.
assistant city manager,
Okay.
Ms. Kantak, has raised her hand. I
Uh,
want to honor that she was waiting patiently.
Thank you, Chair. I'm okay. I can wait. Let Commissioner.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Batillo.
Oh.
Please continue.
Yeah, and follow up to what Robert was saying. Yes, that's the issue is, for example, what City Council member Evelyn was saying that, for example, our spring cleaning, whether it's a senior facility or low income, where we have done that, the funding has to be requested by an entity, by a non-profit entity that will work with us and pay for those other activities. I mean, pay for the expenses that we will incur, including the breakfast or for our volunteers. So that's the issue right now. So again, what I'm hearing from Robert is that if we think we need funding for some of our activities, we need to partner with a nonprofit that will apply for that. We cannot, as a CAC, apply for that money and then give it to ourselves. So that's the issue. Thank you.
Sure. So basically, like then you can consider something like Lions Club or something, right, as a partner, or no?
That's the thing. Yes. I know that we have a new group that's called Unhoused, and we've been giving some tents and some food and cleanup. And I will reach out to the new group that's called Unhoused, and you know, the Lions Club. I've worked with. We did the mask from different groups, and I know that City Council member Evelyn also worked with some other groups. So with regards to the COVID thing and all that stuff, we need to have a group that will apply for the grant. We cannot do it as a CAC.
Commissioner,
Okay.
Yeah.
if I may, Commissioners, if I may, the group must be a nonprofit entity. So-
Yes.
So it's very critical. It can't just be a random group. It must be
Right.
organized. Okay, just
Is-
wanted to be clear.
Is that a 501c4 or a 501c3? There's a
C3.
distinction.
Right. Three.
Yeah.
C3.
C3. Yes.
So if I may, Robert, since everything that we do, we need to do it within the city guideline. You have to check with the city, the council, and all that. So it's good for us to have some sort of a guideline, a summary, so that all of our discussion, all of our thought will be right to, will be right to the point, and it legal, so that we don't have to come to April 7 and have all kind of idea, and then you have to check with the
Yeah.
city manager again. So the legal aspect of it, everything, please have a guideline for us, have a summary for us, and send it to us probably within this month, so that we can prepare our thought, and we have enough time to do outreach to the community and all of that stuff. So I think that would be really helpful.
I'm sorry, I have another question. How did we fund, or how did we allow the Parks and Recreation get the scholarship, the funds that we gave them for after school? Is that allowed now in this kind of situation?
We did fund the recreation department, but not for after school. But it is allowed that
Okay,
a city department can apply for funding if it fits one of the consolidated goal plans, and obviously meets the criteria for a CDBG activity. So
right.
that's certainly possible.
So yeah, it would help us if you have those kind of entities in the city that we can work with, because that's what happened to us before. because the Parks and Recreation had some funding, we work with them so that they will help us with our project, because we were not allowed to apply.
So I just,
That's kind of weird that we apply and then we give ourselves money.
No, you have
That
to
might be kind
partner.
of tough.
Thelma, you have to
Yes,
partner
we
with
need to.
the nonprofit.
Yes,
Could
we
be a
need to
church,
partner
it
with
could
someone
be-
else.
yeah.
That's what I've been, stressing out, that we cannot ourselves give, apply and then get money, So anyway,
No,
thank you so much.
we
Maybe
the
the
one
assistant city
I will
manager.
make suggestion, all of that stuff. It will be totally, major conflict of interest right there, Thelma.
Right, definitely. Ashwini, maybe it's your turn. I'm sorry. Thank
And
you.
then Councilmember Chua. Okay,
didn't-
Ms. Kantak.
yes, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to add a few things to, you had talked about the kind of providing services to people, who were exposed to COVID, had to quarantine. So just wanted to mention that the city actually does have a contract with the county to do that. So similar to what you've seen in other cities. So isolation, at-home support, financial assistance. So we do have that in place. And so that's one we could look at to see if it would be eligible for CDBG, the CV funds. The other thing I wanted to share was that we just recently established a nonprofit.
Yeah, that's my question.
Yeah, so we can look at that. That's just a new thing now. So we'll have to look at that and see if there's a possibility through that nonprofit to kind of fund some of these community efforts. And yeah, that's all. I just wanted to share those two things, and we'll take a look and see kind of what the opportunities are for some of the areas of interest and how we can make that happen.
Thank you, Ms. Kantak. My only question will be how we are informed, or how we know about, or if there's a family that is having this allocation or support needed. How is that being canalized, or what is the process for that? Who needs to be contacted, or?
We can get you that information. It's through the county. Again, the agreements with the county, but they have other, they have kind of their partners too. So we can get you that information through Rob.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Chu, I think you
Thank
have your
you.
hand.
Thank you, Chair. Actually, Ashwini partly answered my question. I was going to ask the same thing because I saw a presentation by Director Renee on the new 501c3 that they established at Parks and Recs, and I was thinking about that we can use that entity to get some of the funding for the cleanup, the cleanup of CAC, the cleanup of the homeless camps in city properties, and also the hotel vouchers, because they are low income. If you can get that information, that would be awesome. Thank you. Thank
Yeah,
you,
we'll look
Chair.
at what the constraints are, but yes.
Thank you.
Thank you
Chair
very much for
Leon?
the presentation. Yes, we are.
I just want to let you know, yeah, there's been a hand raised in a public comment. So if you
Please.
wanted to, okay. Yeah, Urvish Kumar Mehta, please go ahead.
Yeah, good evening to the Community Advisory Commission, to Chair, Vice Chair, and all the Commissioner. I just wanted to mention about that with the ongoing situation of COVID. There's a need of to increase the capacity for COVID-19 testing within the city of Milpitas. The Santa Clara County has provided free testing sites. However, still, there's a greater need in the community with regards to the COVID-19 testing. As well as it is also important to ensure that all the communities within the city of Milpitas, which is emerging as a Milpitas Metro, it requires a lot more awareness in terms of a COVID-19 testing. It requires exposure notification to be enabled with the help of a technology. It requires a passport.doc services to be enabled, which works with the different medical providers to provide the right set of a health check status as well. it is also important that the seniors, youth, as well as all different generations, kids, they be aware of that, what it takes to cope up through the COVID-19 situation, as well as also it is important to increase the COVID-19 vaccination capacity at different medical service provider like a Walgreens, CVS. More awareness, more spreading the awareness, more awareness in the community and education about the ongoing situation within the city would also help them understand that what it takes to develop the right set of standards during this pandemic. It is also important to understand that that the community understand what is the pandemic is about, and when the vaccination is going to be available, what it takes, what is the effect of having a vaccination to be taken, as well as to understand that what is going to be the what is the what are the causes, and what is the importance of doing the COVID-19 testing. The technology enabling the services through the technology would develop and shape the community in a better way to in terms of education, health, and services that is to be offered through the public service by the city of Milpitas. The community commission must consider to provide these updates to the city of Milpitas website, and also increase the capacity in a way that everybody is aware that what the community commission is doing. Also, establishing the international relationship under this COVID situation would also help ease out community to know that what city is offering, not just in terms of a COVID-19 vaccination, and as well as the different services, but also how they could expand themselves, at the international level with the help of a city as well.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your comments. I just wanted to reiterate the specific role for the CAC. We are a community advisory commission, and we have some specific guidelines of what is our role and what is under the scope of our job or our commission as advisory. Some of your comments, thank you very much, and thank you. Any other, Ms. Sharon, anybody else's?
No, that was it.
Thank you very much.
Chair.
Councilmember Chua, I think you had your hand raised before. You're muted.
No, thank you, Chair. I'm really excited. I think there's a way to do, hopefully, to do your projects because it's very difficult. I remember when I was on CIC many years ago, it's always the issue of funding. And I think with the help of staff, we can get some funding through maybe, hopefully, with the 501c3 that the city has established, and it will be more projects, and we don't have to worry about where to get the money to pay for the dumpster, and which is very expensive. So that's good. I see a lot of potential in terms of meeting your charter, and I'm really excited about it. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Councilmember Chua, and thank you, Robert and Sarah, for your presentation. And again, looking forward to have those guidelines and documents that it was requested by Commissioner Van to educate us on what our new role is and how we can better support the CDBG process for the incoming year. Then we move to item number 10. I know that we are kind of right on time. Council member, anything else you want to add? Any report?
Yes, the staff and the council are busy working on initial plan for the budget for 2021 and 2022. So everybody's busy from I know from the city staff, and also we had our second, I think, budget hearing last night, and that went well, I think. So we will have a series more meetings until we have an adopted budget plan for next year. And the deadline is July 1st. That's the cutoff date. So also, two residents were appointed to Planning Commission. They're returning Planning Commissioners, actually, Commissioner Larry Serradella and Commissioner Dr. Alex Galang. And we have some appointments to the Science and Technology as well. I think Mr. Commissioner Alcorn is going back. So I'm glad to see that. I'm really excited because there's no more term limit. So you can stay as long as you want. Like the Chair Leon said, you can stay as long as you want, which is really good. And we are like, it's very busy. I think we have a complete membership on the homeless task force, which will help our homelessness in Milpitas more strategic long-term. And we're doing as much as we can in terms of short-term, the tactical problems we're trying to address. And we're still, if you guys, any of you is interested, the application for the Measure F Oversight Committee has been extended, so please apply. I think the Deputy City Manager still need more people. So that's it, and we'll see you again next month. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Any city staff report?
There is no city staff report.
Thank you.
Oh, Chair, excuse me. I'm
Yes.
sorry. I forgot to mention that last night, remember you have that Safety First event that you were communicating with MUSD. Council member Anthony Fan pulled that one, so you don't need to worry about it.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to also mention the commissioners that Tony from the safety director or coordinator, I can't remember her title. She's put in a group of citizens to try to help with collaborative effort of a new plan for safety guidelines. Correct me if I'm wrong how I'm stating it, but it's open for anyone who wants to join and support Tony in her department.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair, for sharing that. And yes, we're working with Tony to help her with outreach to the community for input from public members into the emergency operations plan. So yes, thank you for sharing that with the rest of the commissioners.
Thank you. I already signed it. Okay, if we don't have any more items, we're kind of over our time. Any motions of adjourning?
So this is Commissioner Gandhi. I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting for tonight.
Thank you,
I definitely
Second.
second it.
Thank you, Commissioner Rosario. Second. Commissioner Van Tran?
Yeah, no, I just said I
Aye.
definitely would second it.
We're voting yes?
Yes,
Commissioner Batillo?
yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Commissioner
Yes.
Leon too?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Thank you for
Good night.
For the meeting. Good night, and looking forward to see you next month.
This is a
Thank you,
great
everyone.
meeting. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you
Good
so
night.
much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.